Also in the Guinness Book of World Records, right?
I am?
Yeah.
Paul Newman. The name alone conjures images of piercing blue eyes, effortless charisma, and the golden standard of Hollywood stardom. He wasn't just another matinee idol. He was a serious actor, a dedicated philanthropist, and a man deeply rooted in his beliefs. To the outside world, Newman seemed like the perfect leading man, charming, philanthropic, and dignified. But what many don't realize is that behind the polished exterior was a fiercely principled artist who didn't tolerate nonsense, especially in an industry built on ego and illusion. Newman had little tolerance for those who, in his view, cut corners or relied too heavily on their looks and charm. He demanded authenticity in every frame, and when others didn't meet that same standard, tensions flared. As much as he was loved by audiences, he was known in Hollywood for his strict code of conduct, and it often led to serious clashes with fellow actors. These weren't petty arguments. They were deeply rooted ideological conflicts, personal disagreements, and competitive tensions that sometimes derailed entire projects. From brutal on-set tensions to full-blown shouting matches at parties, these confrontations reveal a different side of Newman, a side that fans rarely got to see. Let's dive into the 6 actors Paul Newman simply couldn't stand and the stories behind their legendary disputes. Number 6. Warren Beatty. In the height of the 60s and 70s, Warren Beatty and Paul Newman were frequently mentioned in the same breath. Both were leading men with undeniable looks, natural charisma, and a reputation for turning heads. But while they may have seemed like Hollywood twins on paper, their philosophies couldn't have been more different. Newman believed in earning every role through grit and dedication, while he saw Beatty as someone who leaned too heavily on charm and celebrity. Newman grew increasingly irritated by what he saw as Beatty's manipulative nature, especially on set. A particular project in the early 70s brought their animosity to a boil when both men found themselves vying for the attention of a mutual co-star. What started as quiet resentment soon turned into overt friction. Newman believed Beatty was more focused on crafting his public image than developing his skills as an actor. Another point of contention was Beatty's success as a producer. While Newman remained rooted in the craft of acting, Beatty was leveraging his behind-the-scenes power to shape narratives and win prime roles. This shift in power dynamics made Newman feel like the playing field was no longer fair. The rift became so problematic that any talks of working together were eventually abandoned. A filmmaker who had dealt with both once remarked, "Paul thought Warren was all flash and no foundation." They were rivals by nature, never meant to share the screen. Number 5. Marlon Brando. Paul Newman once admired Marlon Brando. Brando had revolutionized acting, bringing raw vulnerability and realism to the screen. Films like On the Waterfront and A Streetcar Named Desire had made him a living legend, and Newman respected that. But that admiration quickly eroded when he experienced Brando's erratic behavior firsthand. Newman ran a tight ship. He arrived early, hit his marks, and expected others to do the same. Brando, by contrast, played by his own rules. When the two were both being considered for a major studio film, Newman watched in horror as Brando showed up late to meetings, demanded script rewrites, and treated the whole process like a joke. For Newman, this wasn't just frustrating, it was insulting. The project eventually collapsed, and Newman placed much of the blame on Brando's shoulders. He believed that Brando had squandered his gifts and disrespected the very craft that had made him a star. A casting executive later commented, "Paul thought talent was a responsibility. Brando had the gift but not the discipline, and Paul couldn't stomach that kind of recklessness." Number 4. Cary Grant. To Newman, Cary Grant was the embodiment of old Hollywood's artificial charm. Polished, elegant, and always in control, Grant had built a career on playing the same suave persona in nearly every film. While the public adored Grant, Newman saw through it. He believed Grant's performances lacked depth, and that he never took creative risks or pushed emotional boundaries. Tension came to a head during a high-profile studio gathering in the mid-1960s. Newman made pointed remarks about surface-level performances and actors who never stepped outside their comfort zones. Though he never mentioned Grant by name, it was obvious to everyone in the room who he was referring to. Grant, offended, clapped back by suggesting Newman's method-acting intensity wasn't any more valid than his own breezy approach. He argued that entertainment, not tortured realism, was the purpose of film. What began as a professional disagreement became a philosophical standoff. To Newman, Grant symbolized a bygone era that prized illusion over honesty. To Grant, Newman was part of a pretentious new generation that had forgotten how to simply entertain. A producer close to both later summed it up. Paul thought Carey wasn't serious enough. Carey thought Paul was too serious about everything. They were two titans from different worlds. Number 3, Steve McQueen. On paper, Steve McQueen and Paul Newman should have been best friends. They were both adrenaline junkies, race car enthusiasts, and A-list stars known for their gritty screen presence. But their similarities only fueled their rivalry. Each wanted to be Hollywood's alpha male, the rebel, the racer, the rugged icon. And with every new film or endorsement, they were constantly being compared. The rivalry intensified during a professional racing event in the early 70s. Both men took the track seriously, but McQueen's aggressive driving style pushed things too far. After McQueen nearly caused a crash, Newman exploded. He confronted McQueen in the pit, accusing him of being reckless and disrespectful. What started as a debate over racing quickly turned into a bitter exchange about who truly deserved the title of Hollywood's top action star. They never physically fought, but the animosity lingered. They avoided projects that might force them to share billing, and mutual friends were careful never to mention one around the other. A veteran stuntman who worked with both said it best: Paul and Steve were like two lions in the same cage. Each thought he was the king and neither would back down. Number 2, William Holden. William Holden, known for his cerebral performances and quiet intensity, seemed like someone Newman would get along with. But when it came to technique, the two couldn't have been more different. Holden meticulously studied his roles, preparing every line and movement. Newman, on the other hand, preferred a more instinctual style, letting the performance emerge naturally during filming. Their opposing styles led to tension during pre-production discussions for a possible collaboration in the 70s. Holden questioned whether Newman's improvisational tendencies would mesh with his methodical approach. Newman took offense, feeling patronized and dismissed. He believed Holden's hyper-preparation made his performances stiff, while Holden saw Newman as undisciplined. The fallout escalated when Holden made offhand remarks about Newman's commitment to acting, comments that made their way back to Paul. Deeply insulted, Newman walked away from the project. The failed partnership taught both men to avoid each other going forward. They were both brilliant, said one director, but their methods were oil and water. Number 1, Rock Hudson. No feud captured Newman's disdain for the Hollywood machine more than his clash with Rock Hudson. To Newman, Hudson wasn't a real actor. He was a product, carefully curated by studio heads. Everything about Hudson's public persona, from his name to his romantic life, had been molded for mass appeal. Newman viewed this kind of manufactured stardom as toxic to the integrity of the craft. Their hostility erupted during a glamorous Hollywood party. Newman, after a few drinks, publicly criticized the rise of actors who achieved fame through looks and studio backing rather than talent. Though he didn't single Hudson out by name, it was clear who his words were aimed at. Hudson attempted to walk away, but Newman followed, turning the confrontation into a full-blown spectacle. The stories spread like wildfire across Hollywood, and the bad blood between them became impossible to ignore. Newman avoided events Hudson attended, and the two never appeared on screen together. For Newman, this feud wasn't just about one man, it was about the entire system that Hudson represented. As one top agent explained, Paul wasn't just attacking Rock, he was going after a whole era of Hollywood fakery. Despite his clean-cut image, Paul Newman was a man of fire and integrity, traits that didn't always sit well with the Hollywood elite. These 6 feuds remind us that even legends clash, especially when the stakes are high and the spotlight burns hot. Which iconic rivalry should we break down next? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from classic Hollywood.